secretary, who's a Robert Rubin protege, and Erzag, the budget director under Obama, who is also part of the Clinton team. These are the people that deregulated the banking system and the financial sector. These are the people that put the nail in the Glass-Steagall Act that prevented banks from becoming casinos, or they call them investment bankers, brokerage.
Yeah, right.
And then they bought Smith Barney, and like Citigroup, Travelers merged with Citibank, and then puts together with Smith Barney. Then they created these one-stop financial supermarkets. Oh, and how the people loved Sandy Weil, and the media elevated him to genius level. How about calling Sandy Weil a greedy little pig to put everybody else out of business so he could get all this money, and bank managers and bank vice presidents and people in communities that had paying jobs, living wages, they could become clerks for greedy pig Sandy Weil. And so, when you talk about what Steve Forbes says about what the banks should be doing, this is the whole scam that put us in the problems that we have now. The casinos are not supposed to gamble because, as anybody knows, when you gamble, you lose.
That's right. That's what seems to happen. I had a friend of mine here today, Gerald, Mexican descent. He works for me on the side, does a few jobs. He told me that a lot of the banks are hiring him now to go into these foreclosed homes and fix them up. And he told me that these banks, these treasured institutes of America, just want him to do cosmetics. If he finds something like, let's say the people, they're foreclosed on, they leave the house. Sometimes they get very upset. I've heard you say many times people lose it when they lose everything. They're putting quick concrete in the pipes. They're cutting the studs in the house. They're spreading things I won't name on the air on the walls. And he said that these homes are actually worth much less than even these quote-unquote low prices when you take into consideration what would be needed to bring them up to spec. And, of course, the banks don't want to spend what it would take to bring them up to spec.
Oh, of course. And this is going to be a fool's game, too. The people that go into these things think they're going to buy these foreclosures cheap, make a killing. And this real estate market has a long way down to go. And those are not the properties to buy. That doesn't mean you shouldn't buy anything. We're not saying that. There may be that, great sweet deal of an historic or a property with unique character, something like that, and you could pick it up cheaply, and you could afford to do it with no undue stress, that could be a wise investment. But to go into these other kind of investments, like you're talking about, all of these foreclosures, when people are left very angry, you better watch out.
Absolutely. Gerald, I've heard you describe the future as Mexico City. New York City becomes Mexico City. Let's say a place like Las Vegas, Nevada, an incredible amount of money poured into the Strip, a beautiful sight at night. What do you see for something like Las Vegas, let's say 18 months from now, 2 years from now?
Oh, crime. Very high. Crime is our greatest concern. And I'm a close combat practitioner, and I have been for many years. I'm trained by John Perkins of attackproof.com, and he's in my world of doing this. I always seek the best of the best in everything that I do. And what he tells us is you better plan for survival. Because if you're ready for survival, and if something less than that is needed, you can pull back from that point. But right now, people should start thinking in terms of survival, whether it's assets, where you live, how you're going to protect yourself. We have a population in this country. It's very different than the Great Depression, and that's why we're saying it's the greatest depression. And, of course, we write about it in much more detail in the Trends Journal. But briefly, one of the things is we were an ascending society back then. Now we're a descending society. You look in the major cities, you're lucky to get a 15% high school graduation rate. What's 50%, excuse me. 50%. And what's a high school diploma worth? A college diploma is not worth anything. The point being, now you have these ignorant unfortunately ignorant young people. Their minds blown on an array of drugs that we never heard of before, from hillbilly heroin on up and down. And they're out of their minds, and they have nothing to live for. Oh, you're going to talk reason to them? You're going to start seeing violence and gang violence like this country's never experienced before. When we say Mexico City, you're going to start seeing kidnappings start happening more and more and more. And you know what the reaction's going to be from the moronic politicians? Let's get tough on crime. Oh, yeah, turn it in more into a police state. Just what we need.
Gerald, what do you think has happened to the American mindset over the past 12 years, living through the internet bubble, the real estate bubble, the second stock market bubble? Do you think America, you mentioned this a little bit before, but do you think the mindset has gone down so much that we're just totally incapable, the masses, to handle what's ahead?
People are afraid of it. People are afraid of looking at reality. You know, you talked about my career, since 1980. There was a time in the mid-2000s, early 2000s, people didn't want to hear what we had to say. Business wasn't flourishing, to say the least.
Right.
And, first of all, we came out with our trend forecast a month before the Iraq War happened, and we said the United States would achieve a swift battlefield victory, and it would swiftly devolve into a guerrilla war. And it would be bogged down for years until the United States was forced out, either through a loss of casualties or an inability to keep funding the war. That wasn't a popular thing, so of course people don't like what they hear, and they call us names. And you keep going on down the list. So what used to happen when we kept saying that the real estate bubble was going to bust and that this whole thing was nothing more than a Ponzi scheme of the government lowering interest rates, they were going to have to raise them at some point. When they did, the bubble would burst as it happened. Well, people used to write to us and say, we agree with what you're writing, but can't you write about something more positive? Like they're a bunch of little kids. The ship has just taken 7 torpedoes. It's taking on water faster than you could bail it out. And what do you want us to say? Oh, doesn't the band sound wonderful?
Well, if you use hope and optimism as your investment strategy, you're almost certain to end up with no investment. You've got to look ahead and see as best you can what the future holds so you can be there ahead of the rest of the people, because most of the people are going to go down in any type of investment opportunity, right?
Oh, that's right. And, hey, look, there was something in the on Bloomberg today about a director, a couple of people from Citigroup who just bought, several million shares of Citigroup on a memo just before the memo was sent out by the president of Citigroup that they were going to show a profit, and they made themselves, several $1 million. I mean, and they put this story on the wire as though it's a normal thing. I mean, doesn't anybody get it? Is when the only people that are making it in these kind of games are the people on the inside, the people that have the inside track. You go out there as a rookie speculator and you think you know what you're doing. Yeah, you may win at the wheel every now and then, but the house will win at the end.
Absolutely. And that's what they do. They lure you in.